This is Keys to the Shop, Founder Friday edition. Today we're talking with Leo Ferreira, owner of Puzzle Coffee Shop in Tanzania. Well, hey everybody, and welcome to another episode of Keys to the Shop, where we give you insights, inspiration, and the tools you need to grow as a coffee service professional. My name is Chris DiFirio. I am your host for the show, and I'm really excited to have you here today. Don't forget to subscribe to the show. Just hit the subscribe button. You will be notified when all new episodes come out, and it happens frequently. Every month there's just about 10 on average episodes, including the Rate of Rise series on roasting, Founder Fridays like today, regular Tuesday episodes, and then our shift break episodes, which are the short 10-minute format little vignette podcasts that we do on Thursdays. So go ahead and hit subscribe. That would be awesome. And don't forget to share these episodes and just post on social media and to your group that you belong to, just with your professional group or in your network, about Keys to the Shop. That's a great way to help the show grow and to allow other people to explore the content that Keys to the Shop has developed over the past 7 years and over getting close to 800 episodes now totally published. And so that would be awesome. And thank you so much, everybody, for doing that. Now, I want to let you know about Keys to the Shop Consulting. So on top of doing this podcast, I also work with many owners and operators who are either wanting to get started on the right foot in the coffee retail space, or they already have businesses, but they really want to explore how to refine what they have, whether that's because they're scaling and they want to have an assessment of their cafe and some coaching, or they are just dealing with some issues and some situations that need some assistance to really help bring the operations quality and the people and the management and leadership and culture to the next level. And that's exactly what I love doing. And I've been so blessed to be able to help many people over the years. And maybe that's you. So if you would reach out, chris@keystotheshop.com. That's the email to set up a free discovery call, and we will talk all about what you have going on and how Keys to the Shop Consulting can help you. Keep an ear out too, because we're about to launch the Keyholder Coaching Group. This is a peer-to-peer coaching group and support group for coffee shop owners. The first group, we have 6 people. We're launching tomorrow, in fact, and applications are closed right now for that group. But come 6 months from now or so, actually before that, I'm going to start announcing the new openings, the new applications. And if you're interested in getting notified about the openings for the next Keyholder Coaching Group, then go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com. I'll put your name on a list so you can have some pre-registration notification so you can get ahead in that process. Again, that's chris@keystotheshop.com. Now, I just got back from a site visit at a client's place, and it was Getaway Cafe in Carver, Minnesota. Wonderful people there, and a great coffee shop. And they are customers also of the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer, which is the sponsor of today's episode. And, you know, I love going to places where they have experienced the just game-changing quality that comes from the Ground Control Cyclops Brewer. This was no different. It was wonderful to see in action, as always. And if you're not familiar with the Ground Control, it is a revolutionary piece of equipment that allows you access to a depth and range of flavors through its SCA award-winning technology that really levels up quality. But also, the extraction technology gives you the ability to make tea, batch iced lattes, batched cold brew. So this is amazing for cafes all over the world who are using this for events and batching espresso for catering and things like that. So I would encourage you to check out groundcontrol.coffee to learn more about this amazing piece of equipment. And if you're looking for a level up in quality, but also an opportunity to open up more revenue streams in your business, then I would explore getting a Ground Control in your cafe. Again, to check them out and learn more, go visit them at groundcontrol.coffee. You know, hospitality is about being present with the person you're serving. That means making sure that there's intentionality behind the product that you're using to serve them with. And if you pay attention, people really value consistency and quality, the performance and texture, and the balance of flavor that you get from especially things like plant-based beverages. That's why I love the Barista series from Pacific. It's a line of plant-based beverages created for baristas, tested by baristas, and that's why it performs on your bar the way it does. It is just second to none, and you can visit pacificfoodservice.com, get samples in your shop, and try it for yourself. See what I'm talking about. You can have your baristas try it and use it on the range of your menu. The balance of the beverages taste is focused on the coffee. It creates amazing texture. It's just a wonderful product. And so if you are looking for the best plant-based beverage to serve your guests, then I would encourage you to consider using the Barista series from Pacific. Okay, everybody. Well, today we are in for a treat because we're going to be talking with Leo Ferreira, who is the owner of Puzzle Coffee Shop in Tanzania. Now, Puzzle Coffee Shop has been open now for just about, if not exactly, 7 years. And in that time, through operating this cafe representing specialty coffee in Tanzania, and then also taking on roasting and developing a lot of wholesale accounts where they are also educated in coffee, Puzzle Coffee Shop has been a catalyst for change in the country of Tanzania. Now, you know Tanzania from, of course, the most famous coffee from there, the Tanzania Peaberry coffee. And as in most producing countries, there is a lot more of a tea culture in this particular area. And this has been changing over the years, and Puzzle Coffee Shop has been at the heart of that. And at his heart, Leo is an educator. He is an AST certified instructor in both brewing and in roasting. He is a Q grader and has recently expanded to the Middle East, taking on a decisive focus on education. And in today's conversation, we're going to be talking with Leo about what led to the founding of Puzzle Coffee Shop in Tanzania and how he went about hiring and training and interacting with the culture and developing new norms for the customer base that has since kind of had a ripple effect on the coffee scene in the area. And so this is a wonderful conversation as we talk about entrepreneurship and all of the things that Leo has learned along the way about managing himself, managing people, taking on the craft of coffee and roasting and education, and what it means to let your passion push you to be decisive in your action and grow as you go. And this is exactly what's been happening with Puzzle Coffee Shop. And as we'll talk about, it's wonderful to see how these pieces have come together over the years. So, fascinating conversation. I hope you really enjoy it. Here now is my conversation with the founder of Puzzle Coffee Shop, Leo Ferreira. Well, Leo, welcome to Keys to the Shop. I'm really excited to have you on the show. How's it going today?
I'm doing well. Thank God, doing well.
Yes, and I am fascinated by your business and your career. I know I saw something about you on IamNotABarista.com also, as well as just, finding your coffee shop, not personally in Tanzania, but as one of, the top places that you can go for great coffee in Tanzania. And this is the feature of Founder Friday. We love exploring coffee shops, not just in the U.S., but all around the world. And so this is bound to be a fascinating conversation. I'm really excited. So tell me a little bit about how you got into coffee in the first place. What sparked your interest to develop this into a business?
Yeah, that is a good question because, having a coffee shop, being a Brazilian in Tanzania, as we were for 8 years, that was the first question that the customers used to come. Why you are doing here and why you have a coffee shop? That's always the first question. I'm an engineer by my background, and I have never thought having a business. But as a coffee drinker, always fascinated with coffee because we are from the biggest coffee producing country, and then coffee is a must for every day. But we got into a time in our life. I'm married, so I have 2 kids, but in that time we didn't have kids. My wife and I, we decided to be volunteers in Africa. So we start our journey in South Africa. We went there, spent the time volunteering, helping communities. And then we were planning to visit Tanzania, and we heard about Tanzania. But I was like what to do in Tanzania, just, going and working. Let's have a business. So the first thing came in our mind, let's have a coffee shop. So in the coffee shop, we can, connect with people and also help the community. So that was our first idea. And then we started.
Okay, so you established a coffee shop in Tanzania, and that is something that I want to dive into because you decided to open a coffee shop, and so you did. But obviously, going from a coffee drinker and then establishing yourself in this country, opening a business, there's a lot of steps between that. What was the journey like to become familiar enough with both the idea of a small business and coffee to be able to establish Puzzle Coffee Shop? Or was that really the puzzle in itself that you took on?
Yeah, that's also interesting because it's a part of how we got into the coffee. The name of our coffee means it's Puzzle Coffee Shop. But the reason behind is the time that my wife and I were in life, we was kind of trying to understand that what to do specifically. And first, before the coffee shop came the name, like we are feeling the life looked like puzzle in the time we're living, 2015. And then we kind of, yes, if one day you're going to have a business, the name will be Puzzle. And then the coffee came alongside because for us, we look at like, okay, I can learn how to make coffee and you can bake. So we start digging and studying a bit more about coffee and South Africa, but very superficially because the time we're living, we couldn't do any course. Barista course, roasting course, nothing.
What year was this?
So this was 2013 specifically.
Oh, okay.
In 2014, that we got the idea, we started studying a little bit more online things, just the idea of the business, not the technical part itself. So being in South Africa, we heard about a school in the US. And inside of that school, it's a business school, they had a coffee shop. So we thought, okay, we can learn a bit about how to set a business abroad, and I can do an internship in the coffee shop. So that was the first step.
Oh, great. So you learned a little bit about the coffee shop business here in the States and then brought that knowledge back to establish Puzzle Coffee Shop. And when you started to go down the road of finding a location and putting roots down for that brick and mortar, how did that transition go from sort of the idea in your mind to the reality, the street level reality of actually doing it?
Yeah, that was really difficult at the level of having the first business, but was kind of manageable considering my past experience in business, like controlling finances. And we lived in Tanzania for a year before opening the shop. So we understood a little bit better about the culture and understanding a bit of the environment. But a business plan, considering all the details that we did and the reality, that was a really journey that we're still going on. But what gave us the boldness to pursue and continue was my background, because I was in my mind, okay, managing and learning coffee, I think learning will be easier than managing the business itself, the finances, controlling all the details. So when we started, we had worked in this coffee shop in the US only for 4 months. So we went to Brazil, we did some courses. My wife did the Barista foundation course, and I did coffee tasting. In that time, they used to call that. And then it was like, okay, we now have an idea about quality, and we have the business management. Okay, let's go into that. So the time in the US helped us to build more knowledge in the industry and connections in Zanzibar. Because, through people that doing business in the US, I start visiting roasteries and other coffee shops. So they helped me to dive into the details. And when we moved, we were like, okay, we have enough boldness and not enough knowledge yet, but we can start it. So when we really started, we didn't know, when I look back, 10% what I know today.
But you had the passion. The passion carried you.
I had the passion. That's one of our values. We have 3 values at the shop. Be honest, be passionate, be yourself. So that was things that helped me to pursue. And the passion, I would say, was the number one because gave me the curiosity to, during the years, start studying more. And then I heard about the coffee skills program at SCA, the Specialty Coffee Association, and I start doing all the modules from green coffee up to roasting. And then today I became a key grader, I became an AST trainer. So that was a long journey that I would say now 8 years.
Oh, wonderful. Wonderful. Man, well done. And going to that point where you have the cafe. Now you've got the business acumen from past experience in your career, and then now you've got coffee that is the subject of your business, and you start this cafe. I mean, the planning of what you're going to offer in Zanzibar, Tanzania there, how much of this is to kind of meet people where they are in terms of coffee culture in the area? And what is that coffee culture like, especially when you first started?
Yeah, the coffee culture in Africa in general, it's not that strong when you compare with other countries. They more like tea-like culture. When we brought the specialty coffee concept, even for us was quite new and was quite challenged because for us, what the community sees us now is like that guys, they have knowledge because we start studying. So we became like a reference for the specialty because we were, I would say, first one in the country. So for us, was like nobody around us, we need to learn. We really need to understand what it is. And also one of our goals were to educate the community and having locals alongside us. So all the baristas, all the workers, Tanzanians. Even though Zanzibar is a touristic place, we have people from all over the world. We aim it to have always locals, and because of the new concept, helped us a lot going opposite the culture. Because in that time we had, I think, 102 the real coffee shop in Zanzibar. So we could fail bringing something new, or we really could succeed. Considering, okay, you are doing something new, but people now, they have been educated, even the locals, and that's what happened. We're still striving, and now we're going to turn 7 years, and a lot of waves during this, but yeah, we're doing fine.
When you first opened and you had this ethos, be yourself, be passionate, be honest, and you included a focus on having Tanzanian locals to be your staff, and this is obviously what you wanted to do. You said you wanted to be in the community, and this is what happens, even though it's a new concept. How was it received by both your staff that you brought on and the people? And I know tourists are, a lot of maybe expats and other people might be more used to having amenities like specialty coffee in their travels. But especially for locals that are exposed to this for maybe the first time or one of a handful of times, how was this received?
At first was not that easy for the locals, because when you talk about specialty coffee, you always say, wow, it's expensive coffee. And second, oh, this coffee is so weak. That's the terms they used to use. This is not coffee. This is like tea.
Oh.
Inexpensive. I cannot afford it. But the good thing, we try to build this concept around the community, doing trainings and workshops and participate in events. So we are very active, showing them that the coffee is not that expensive, and it's not just like a tea-like coffee, because we brew in different ways. So considering our workforce, the staff, was a bit difficult in the beginning because they used to only, work as a waiters, they're not really educated as baristas. We don't have a lot of competitors that we can, have staffs that have worked before in the coffee industry. They really understand what they're supposed to do. So it was really difficult, considering our standards and the education level of them, that we decide to do all these trainings, the coffee skills program, to help us maintaining and training them the way we like it. So we got to the point that we found out that Tanzania Coffee Board has a school, a partnership with a university, that they have a coffee diploma level for a year, because the turnover was going really high. So we decide, because of the specialty concept, and we are always looking, okay, let's see if the guy has experience working into coffee. No experience. But this school, they stay for a year learning how to cup, how to assess the quality and everything. So let's try to do a partnership with that school, that we have staffs, they do understand, they have a foundation. That will be easier for us to not get too much turnover. So we did this and changed the game completely. So today we have staffs that now became employees from that school, and our journey and the turnover Now I can say stable.
What does that do for your business to have that kind of stability?
The consistency, especially when we decide to roast ourselves, and being the owner and being the barista and being everything was tough to control, and and the turnover. So the consistency was and always is the big deal for any type of business, especially into coffee. And for us was a game change, because having the employees staying for longer than 6 months, you don't have to start over and over training, and you can have specific people in specific departments. So you are barista, you are brewer, you are roaster, because also as the culture works, they're not multitask people. And I took a long time to understand that, because I came from a background and a culture that we do everything. So we start learning this during the journey, and now we can say we are very more stable comparing 2, 3, 4 years back.
How much of the business acquiesces or forms to the idea of the culture's default? Yeah, you mentioned not multitasking or the pace of business. And this is something that people that travel all the time, will talk about the pace being different. Often the trope, I suppose, is that timeliness. Maybe this is a Western thing, like the timeliness of, if you're not on time, you're late, and that's terrible.
Yes.
But I imagine it, works differently when you're running a successful and consistent business in a culture like that. I mean, what kind of flexibility do you have to have as an operator?
I've learned this burning out in the business, considering that I had a high expectation compared with the market, the reality of the market, and the reality of my staffs. So I was burning out, because as any business owner, we always try to learn how to balance family and the business, and always bouncing and spending more time where we do not supposed to spend. So we went to a very critical time that I have to decide, or I lower my expectation and I accept the way they are, pushing more gentle in the areas that I can coach them more, than try to make them like me. So the business was like a mirror to show me, okay, you have to respect that guy, because one of your value is be yourself. So this was more for me than for them.
Oh.
Every time I was looking that, we have a board close to the espresso machine. So that was a sign for me that I have to respect this guy, because he is good in something. And I have to be patient enough to accept that. And as I'm looking for people that will be patient and I need consistency, I need to lower my expectations. So that was one of the biggest struggle and the hard time that I have. But now looking back, I would say, yes, I'm happier then.
It's good to be happy as an operator and not burn out.
Yes. Yeah.
In mentioning lowering your expectations, and I feel like there's probably an evolution of that idea when operators or anybody who is integrating themselves into a situation and trying to adjust and find happiness within it is more of an idea of different expectations, or letting go of things that we thought were absolutely critical and they turned out not to be. So it's almost like it's not even that you were lowering your expectations. It's more as though the situation was teaching you what was ultimately most important, and that your expectations can be flexible.
Yes, that's a good point. Because it's always a decision that we have to make, and sometimes it's hard.
But obviously, the decision that is the most difficult, this is going to be the one that's closest to you, where there has to be kind of a death to an idea, but then it brings life to something else. And
exactly.
Now, when you started to become established and you've got less turnover, you developed a reputation in the coffee shop, talk to us a little bit about what coffee you were serving at first, and then how you got into roasting.
Yeah, as I was explaining that, and we didn't have enough knowledge in the beginning. I was brewing coffee, the filter coffee, espresso-based drinks, and I was like, yeah, that's something else. I start reading and I say, wow, I need more knowledge on that. So I start going from green coffee, sensory, barista, and then I was like, yeah, I think I can roast my own coffee because I want to improve this quality. At first, we had a supplier, but as we know, freshness and all these quality points that we wanted to keep going in the business, I thought, if I roast myself, I can lower the costs and I can keep freshness, quality, and doing the way that I really want. we have some friends in Brazil that they start doing the same, having only the coffee shop, and then we start talking to them, and we like just to get more encouraged. Should I roast? Should I buy? Which type of roaster? And then they just said, buy it. I talked to a guy, he told me like, buy it. So I bought the roasting machine. My wife watched some videos about roasting, Millicity. I didn't have done any course in roasting. And then I started studying, reading a little bit. And she just saw the Millicity website. They had some teachings, foundation teachings in roasting. She watched, I think, 2 episodes. And she was describing to me. And then I like, okay, I can do it. So I started roasting by myself until I get to the point that I felt limited. I need some training. And then I start doing the trainings in roasting up to the professional level. And that was a key for us to understand what to control and how to control.
It really feels like the way that you've approached this is you have gotten in touch with what at the gut level feels like the right move. You've researched enough to give fuel to what you are convicted to do, and you just did it in a small way and grew it from there.
Yes, exactly. That's my personality. I like to understand a little bit and try it. So as soon as I start doing, I start processing and figuring things out. So the coffee shop was the same. We start only brewing side, and then we went to workshops, teaching, and then roasting and consulting other business that they used to come to Zanzibar and ask, how did you open this? Things here are difficult, and you're Brazilian, how is that? So you're kind of supporting other business and other entrepreneurs coming to, and that was amazing for us, really amazing.
Yeah, it's really interesting how you having faith in yourself to figure it out, and that there is resource beyond yourself that will be able to be accessed, really comes together to create forward momentum. And when you discuss the idea of working out till it works out or figuring it out, the it has to be defined, and you have to have some kind of a standard in your head of here's what I want my coffee shop to look like. We have 7 years now. I mean, there's things that your coffee shop will look like that you didn't think it would look like, but then there are goals and standards. When it comes to coffee and roasting coffee, what was the standard that you wanted to achieve with your roasting? And I mean, how did you come upon that standard? And at what point did you feel as though you really started to achieve that with your roasts?
My roasting was the same as the brewing side. That's my passion. I want to understand every single detail. And the way that people are giving us the feedback of the coffee, I want a Tanzanian hear that, inspire them, and be the reference. So as we start having these feedbacks from the customers and, wow, your coffee could be sold in this place, your coffee could be exported. That for us was like, okay, why not? So we start approaching 5-star hotels to be our retailers. We approached supermarkets because the idea was to educate the market and say, hey guys, we have commercial coffee, but we have specialty coffee in affordable price, and the quality as well, it's higher than you have another option. So the only way to keep that, it's learning more in the roasting, keeping consistency, because we were thinking expanding. So how to be consistent in roasting if you are supplying other places and people are reselling your coffee. So we decided to be the reference. And during COVID was a must for us because we were struggling a bit like, how much should we expand? How much should we offer our coffee like in a wholesale part? But the COVID came and said, no, you must do it for surviving. So we start from that point, put our coffee in many places in Zanzibar, and customers that used to come to us, we used to export the coffee to them. So this gave us like, okay, you have a green light, just go it. And we are doing this up to now.
Man, that's excellent. And so the profile and signature of your coffee that people love, this comes a long way from people being a little shocked that this tastes more like tea, and they're comparing it maybe against more concentrated coffees that they're used to drinking now today, to being excited about the coffee itself, not as this is not coffee, but this is a new kind of coffee that we love. What is that profile that you like to sort of say is puzzle coffee shops focus? Because a lot of people will have it's just like really fruity, bright coffees or more developed chocolatey, fudgy, nutty coffees. Or is it just a mix of those things?
Yeah, we have two different approaches. You have like two signatures that will be more this chocolate side for espresso based, and the people that don't like the fruity notes, the acidity. So we have this, I would say, light, medium roast, and medium roast, like say medium. So we always approach them and ask them how you like your coffee, how you brew your coffee. So just the way they say how they brew, we can understand that the type of coffee they wanted. In our shop, we decided to not have printed menu because we wanted to explain to the customer the coffee, how we brew the coffee, where the coffee comes from. If they go to the shelf, they look at the package. Our point was go to the customer, talk to them, ask them how they brew coffee, and explain the details, all the profile of the coffee. Because we realized a lot of people, they leave the country, go to a place, they want to have the same taste, and sometimes as they are not really educated, do not understand what the coffee gives to us, they like, no, I don't want this. So explaining and open them, like giving the knowledge, how to understand, how to approach coffee. You need the balanced coffee, but some of them can give you more fruitiness and all of this. They say, okay, let me try it. Let me see it. So yeah, always a way to engage them and challenging them.
And you offer a variety of different brew methods in your cafe, is that correct?
Yes.
Actually, quite a few.
Yeah, we go to Siphon, to V60, to Calita, Chemex. In the beginning, it was like, we need to impress, showing them all these options, but I didn't know how to work all of them until start, technically learning each one and reducing during the time, because keeping consistency, I wasn't able just to brew myself all of them. So we decided, let's reduce now because you want to keep consistency. But yes, we still having a variety of filter coffee methods.
Yeah. And this is something that contributes again to that conversation that you're having with a customer about how they enjoy their coffee. So you can not only choose the right coffee for them, but also the right brewing method for them, correct?
Exactly. And we always try to brew with them at the table, at the counter, always trying to engage as max as we could, because the experience we had, and still now, a lot of customers that just visit us 3-4 years ago, they're still ordering the coffee. And we have very few of them that we do remember they kind of, I haven't seen this before. But I like it. And I cannot drink different coffee than this. I'm trying to find coffee like this in my country. Can you send me a bag, 2 bags? So that's really nice. That's still really nice. For sure, we can do it.
Yes, we can. Let me ask you about the idea of Tanzanian coffee itself and the history of the country's production of coffee. And this is typical, I think, for a lot of producing countries where the culture is not really about the exported cash crop of the coffee. It's more centered on other things because the best leaves the country. But Tanzanian coffee in, we'll say, specialty third wave or modern coffee circles is not often really talked about.
It's not.
It used to be the main coffee that, I started in coffee in 1999. And then in the 90s, it was one of the only things you would talk about. If you had a Peaberry, Tanzanian Peaberry.
That's the only one you talk about all the time, yeah.
What does it feel like now in the culture as people talk about their own coffee? What is it like right now in terms of people's perception of Tanzanian coffee? Both, I suppose, back in the day when there was a little bit more of a global buzz, and I say this being in a different industry maybe than others, because I think a lot of people still are all about the Peaberry, right?
Yeah.
But it feels like there has been a push almost away from Tanzanian coffee, and I'm not sure why, but I'm curious about how you interact with that particular origin, especially being in the country. What is that like for you and your business?
For us, it's still quite hard because we try to connect with smallholders, small farmers that really are pushing to the specialty grade. And still, as you know, mostly is exported, and local consumption is not that high that we can keep this really good quality. and we still do not have in many specialty coffee shops. So it's still quite challenging. And the Peaberry is still being one of the most famous when you talk about marketing things and exported. So locally, inside of the country, for the good quality is still quite challenging and a lot of space for growth. From the 7 years, I would say now, starting with us, we're still having maybe 10 coffee shops now, I would say, or less, that's pushing for the specialty. And majority of this really good coffee, yes, is exported.
Throughout the whole country?
Yes.
And when you talk about 10 coffee shops and roasteries, this is...
I would say the really specialty concept, not the normal second wave concept. We have many.
Okay. Yeah. And so those coffee shops and those roasteries, if you break down the wall between specialty and point systems and that kind of thing, which is something that a lot of people are talking about, especially when the SCA has a new way of assessing quality that has to do with characteristics of the coffee rather than simply the taste, which is a different conversation. There's hope for maybe quote unquote forgotten origins that fell out of favor in favor of other things when the SCA opens up that larger conversation around attributes is the word they use, I think. But these cafes, how many of them do you think are sourcing coffee from Tanzania, or is it still even second wave shops I'm talking about?
Yeah, considering the coffee shops in Tanzania, you mean the question like if they're sourcing locally, right?
Yeah,
they do. The only point to be the quality of the coffee, and also the education level, like how to brew this coffee that I have. What the potential of this coffee, the characteristics that I have that I can maximize my extraction, or I would say that the gap now, it's the education level of like the coffee education that is still a bit low. And all this year from the second or third year that we started pushing it. SCA courses is still quite expensive. So the only school we have is this one that I mentioned, that the government has a partnership with university. But the majority of the students, they go into more the cupping. They go for the big states and not into the coffee shops. But I would say that local consumption and understanding better the quality, assessing all this, that we know they have good quality Tanzania coffee, that to be more into the education.
And that's something that you do. You're an educator and you offer classes. This is on your website.
Yes, that we still doing that. And my exit plan was when we turn to the 5th, 6th year, we decide to expand to the Middle East. And then we start planning to one of our staff to take over being the head barista or the manager, but managing the shop. And then we decide to train her to take over because we can offer courses that do not need to be certified by SCA because of the prices, but we can continually as one of our goals to educate people and also be more affordable.
So there is this groundswell of education and interacting with a larger market to bring up the demand, even within country, for specialty coffee and higher levels of quality for the product itself, which I imagine, of course, would mean that smallholder farmers would need to invest in infrastructure, which is not cheap, to elevate, different processing standards, to eliminate defects where other roasters may or may not care that much about it. It seems like the world we live in, for better or for worse, does care about it at that specialty level. And so does that seem like a hopeful future to you, considering your proximity to it and where the market in Tanzania is now regarding the quality of the green coffee itself?
Yes, I do believe that. And I could see, especially the farmer that we are working with, it's now turning 6 years that we are working with him. And I can see how much he is pushing to the quality and, changing to different process. According to what the market now is demanding, they are losing this fear of changing, but who wants that? But before changing, how much I know that I'm able to do it. But at the market now, it's growing really fast, and we can see even the coffee shops not being in specialty concept, but they want to have a higher quality. So I think the potential is still there, and just the pace that's a bit different compared with other countries.
It feels as though this is similar to what you did with Puzzle Coffee Shop, in that we mentioned earlier how your passion for what you were embarking on drove you to find the resources, and you learned enough to establish forward momentum as a coffee shop, as a roaster. And you learned, and you kept learning, how to control things, how to let it teach you things. That curiosity drove you. And I feel like what you just described with the farmer that you've been working with for 6 years, whether or not we want to say it's quote unquote better quality, because who's to say, one person's best coffee might be another person's worst coffee.
Exactly.
But the fact that they're driven by an intentionality and a curiosity about controlling all aspects of the process that contribute to that flavor, whatever it is, that seems like more the point.
Exactly. It's good because we learn from the farming side, and they also have our feedback from the customer side. So it's good, and we always try to connect with more as we could, because it's exchanging experience. So they will see what the market's saying about what they're doing, and vice versa. That we try to build, and we still try to connect with more people. Even now, I'm not physically in the shop for the past year, but we still very connected with Tanzania in general, because the place I'm now, people really interested how we could survive 7 years in Tanzania and Zanzibar, and asking about the coffee, and they tried our coffee. Wow, never had before Tanzania. Or I had the Peaberry, the only one that I heard. So all we did in this few years, I think it was a seed for a lot of good more things you're going to come up.
Great. So now you mentioned this a few times. Now you are outside, you're in the Middle East, and I think you're taking this call right now from the Middle East. You have not been on site for a year, but you're expanding the business. You said you want to take it elsewhere, but you're also training up somebody to take on the cafe. There's a lot that goes into that. Obviously, you've learned enough about your operations to know what needs to be trained. Talk to us a little bit about scaling. And at this point in 7 years later, how do you go about prioritizing what you teach somebody who you're trusting to take over the operations?
Yeah, we had a good experience training somebody from the ground. That was always my aim as an engineer. I start training the company up to the high position. I really understood the core values from the company, and I bought that. So I'm wearing what my boss is wearing. So when we found that, because we always understood that the technical part, it's easier than when you have an employee or staff that are loyal to you, to the vision. So when we found one that was, yes, I have this vision, I believe this vision. So it was much easier for us to start like, okay, even we are planning to expand, we cannot move until we find this person. So when he found it, was a time of, okay, so now to learn how to manage this from outside. But it was good because I had by force to leave, because we had to go to my country. My wife was pregnant, and we had to leave. And for us, it was like, okay, now it's time to practice. Because it's so nice when you hear, when you plan, but now it's time to practice. And she stayed with us for 2 years, and she started managing the place in the way that we train it. For sure, in the beginning, had some bumps. But the most important thing that I would say was she bought the vision. The technical part, she's still learning. It's good. But she talks now as the owner of the place. So that gave us the freedom to think further and moving to the Middle East now and doing the same in a different way, not opening a coffee shop, but training. It's our goal, because we can see also the industry needs more education, consistency, and all the experience we had in the business. We can see now people starting, and we can okay, that's a gap you need to think on. So having this experience now, it's kind of, we want to do in different ways, but more concentrating the training.
So this now has been really educational, this conversation. In your experience, you have such a internalized sense of what it takes to succeed. So you're not just teaching, coffee tasting classes and, barista skills, etc. It's business, but it's also you've lived it, and that adds an incredible amount of authority and weight to your words. And so no doubt these efforts toward more education are going to be especially successful because of that. And I suppose as we are wrapping up here, I want to kind of ask about two things. One, what you are the most proud of accomplishing in the past 7 years with Puzzle Coffee Shop. And second, what would you say as a best piece of advice to somebody who wants to open a coffee shop similar in a country that's known for being an origin of coffee, but wants to succeed in an environment where they might be a first mover?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I'm kind of reviewing when we just started. I would say when I look and I say and I feel happy, or the feeling that we accomplished was during the school. The main of the school, the business school, was very short, like 4 months. Building the business plan, when you go to the vision, we go to the marketing, we go to all these studies. There was a topic for exit strategy. If you want to grow your business, if you want to close down business, whatever, when you want to exit, what is your strategy? And I wrote this down. A local person will take over. I'm not saying I'm selling and giving the business, but they'll manage. And for me, it was scary because I had already experience in the country, and I was like, wow, I'm not going to find somebody like this. Maybe, I don't know how that's going to happen. When I look now, I see, yes, it's possible. Because answering the second question was, my purpose was to be part of the community and build the community with knowledge, using their own resources and skills for working. And when I look now, I see one of them that they didn't have any clue about coffee and management, and now managing the coffee that I'm very proud to say that my wife and I, we built it from the ground, from the scratch. And somebody that don't have our background, it's managed this. Yeah, thank God. And answering also the second question is, my advice would be, when you build your team, it's not we are trying to multiply people like us, but we are validating who they are. So as soon as God gives this awareness about them, respecting who they are and filling the gaps, you're going to help us to balance expectations and respecting us. One of the values that be yourself. So I want to see who you are and where I can fill the gap that matches with our vision. So that's my first advice, because we always hear, how can we keep the business? How you can grow the business? How you can keep stable staffs? So always the same question. And looking back now, I can say it was really hard. It's not easy, but we are thriving on that. And always looking back and now give us this, it's possible.
That's wonderful advice. I really appreciate that perspective. So cool to hear the story of Puzzle Coffee Shop, and obviously still putting it together, right?
You're still putting together. That's a puzzle. That's my life. That's my family journey that we just name it.
That's awesome. Leo, thank you so much for being on the show, and tell us where we can learn more about what you're offering in education and also about Puzzle Coffee Shop.
Mainly you'll be on our social media, and we are based in Muscat now, but our aim is to work all around the Gulf. So we do trainings, customize it inside of the coffee shops. We have some partnerships here with some academies. As a key grade as well, we import coffee. We also do something in the green coffee side. And we are also a distributor of Brazilian brand. We started now in the Middle East. We are the representatives. So that is a big part of what we're doing now.
Excellent. And what is the website, if you can put that in there?
www.leomarinho.com. And also for the Instagram page, it will be Leonardo M. Ferreira.
Excellent. Leo, thank you again. This was wonderful. I appreciate your insights.
Yeah, thank you so much for reaching us out. I'm really happy for sharing and talking and learning with you.
Well, I hope that you all enjoyed that conversation and that you got some real inspiration from the story of Puzzle Coffee Shop. And I'm just really impressed, again, as I mentioned at the top of the episode, of this passion that leads you to make a decision and then being open to kind of learning as you go, but not standing still while you wait for it to be perfect. You just keep your focus on the goal, but open up yourself to be able to learn as you go and let other people teach you as well. And that is what makes actually a great teacher. So I'm really excited to hear about this continued growth with Puzzle Coffee Shop and how they've set up one of their employees for success in operating the cafe so they can focus on helping other people to grow themselves as professionals and train and teach them from a place of deep learning themselves. And Leo is such a great example of that. So a huge thank you to Leo Ferreira for being on the show. If you want more information about what's happening at Puzzle Coffee Shop, you can go to puzzlecoffeeshop.com. And I would encourage you to also follow Leo on Instagram. You can do so by just going to Leo M. Ferreira. And you can, of course, find both of those links in the show notes for today's episode. Now, if you have any questions, comments, or feedback about today's episode or any other episode of Keys to the Shop, go ahead and email chris@keystotheshop.com, or you can send me a DM on Instagram @keystotheshop. If you don't follow the show on Instagram, I would encourage you to do so @keystotheshop, and keep your eyes open for new content that's going to be coming out exclusively on YouTube. The Keys to the Shop, as it sounds, Keys to the Shop YouTube channel is going to have some stuff being published, and I hope that it resonates with you and continues to enrich your life in coffee. So with that, I really appreciate everyone joining in and listening to today's interview with Leo Ferreira. Thank you for your support of the show over the years. Don't forget to subscribe, share these episodes with a friend, with your team, with your lawyer, with everybody. And as always, I hope that this episode has truly given you keys to the shop.